Wham's Last Christmas review. Not what you think. So here we have the Christmas number 1 in the UK, Last Christmas by Wham! Exclamation mark. We could probably call it Last Christmas by George Michael, but I'm just saying. There's no evidence that Andrew, Pepsi, or indeed Shirley were anywhere else than elsewhere. For the historically minded, Last Christmas first came out in 1984 and somehow has been revived 1 year before its 40th anniversary. Who knows how these things happen? If you know, please reveal all in the comments. How many times has this song been reviewed? Come on, it has to be in the thousands at least. But I think there's room for one more. And I'm going to do it. But I'm going to do it differently than you think. I'm going to review the drum track. Yes, just the drum track. Here's a snippet. So, A, why am I doing this? And B, how did I isolate the drum track? Well, taking B first, I used the software RipXDAW by Hit and Mix. That's Hit N Mix. They've asked me to put a disclaimer in the description which you may read at your leisure, but I'd suggest my review will be more interesting, unless you're a lawyer. The reason I'm reviewing the drum track is that anyone who creates music will find this drum track primitive, even for 1984. It's a drum machine, robotic and expressionless. Come on, George Michael was already an incredibly successful musician, and he could have paid the best drummer in the world to play the best drums in the world for him. But he chose this. I never met George, by the way, but I was in the building when he was recording Older. I patted his dog. Well, the dog came up to me and wanted to be patted, but I don't really get that. I got to stand where he stood to record his vocals while he was on a break. Apparently, the engineer just left him to get on with it with the remote for an IZ radar in front of him to make as many takes as he liked. Good times. But going back to the drum track, apparently it's a LinnDrum, and I guess it would be in 1984. Decent drum machines with decent drum sounds were thin on the ground at the time. But, as I said, the sounds are robotic and expressionless. Clearly, though, that's what George wanted as part of his artistic statement. And engineer Chris Porter is quoted as,
"You've got the happiness of the rhythm track, but against that, you've got the sadness of the unrequited love."
As the YouTubers say, let's get into it. There's more to this than meets the ear, unless you listen closely. So, here's the start of the song. Separated from the other instruments, apparently a Roland Juno 60 and bass guitar, played by George, we can at last hear the drums clearly. Yes, kick and snare. Robotic and soulless, but the hi-hat and cymbal, well, I like it. This is a cute bit of programming. With synths and drum machines in the olden days, you usually couldn't get them to do what you wanted them to do, so you had to work within what they could do well. I could almost be fooled that the hi-hat and cymbal are being played for real. Am I being fooled? What do you think? Now, the fill. I think this is a statement. This is a drum machine. What you going to do about it? There seems to be an extra beat in here somehow, but I think it's the kick being played an eighth note late, or a quaver in proper English. That's the kind of thing I'd do by accident and then be proud of my work. So, every time I've listened to this song previously over the last 39 years, I've just assumed that the drums go on like this all the way through. In truth, although drum machines had the ability to chain multiple different patterns, most producers, I'm not saying programmers, couldn't be bothered and they just used the same loop all the way through. I say couldn't be bothered, but honestly it needed a serious study of the manual and every brand of drum machine was different. But the drum track does develop. The next fill is different. And there are frequent small variations as the song plays through. Now, let's go back to the beginning and listen to the hi-hat and cymbal. Taking the cymbal first, there's a crash on the very first beat, and also on the second beat of bar 3. A crash cymbal on the second beat? The crash symbol is normally used for accents, and accents normally come on the first beat of the bar, unless you want to draw attention to something. Here, the crash somehow just slips in, but hey, it works. Does it always come on beat 2 of the bar, in whatever bar it's wanted? Well, I didn't listen for the crash all the way through, but it seems to. Maybe I'll do it myself in my next song. I'll let you hear it, but be warned, my singing. Now the hi-hat, mostly closed hi-hat, but I hear an open hi-hat on the 8th note after beat 4 of bar 2. Pretty standard, but pretty subtle here. The LinnDrum has 2 buttons for closed hi-hat, which, according to legend, if not the actual manual, are the same sample at different levels. I don't know. My experience with the LinnDrum was meagre. It was extremely expensive at the time, and I was lucky ever to get a go on one. So if you have one right here, right now, tell us whether the samples are the same or different. Anyway, with programmed drums, 2 options for level might not be enough exactly, but enough, as we see, to make a mega hit record. As for the closed hi-hat rhythm, I could get my ruler out and measure if there's any swing, or what the LinnDrum calls shuffle, but maybe I'll leave it to your ears. Here it is again. This is fun, isn't it? It's almost like the ghost of George Michael is looking over us. You idiots, he's saying. Why all this analysis when it just came naturally to me? Well, not so naturally to me and possibly to many of my viewers. We like to learn. Now, listen to this. We're further on in the song and I've stopped counting bar numbers. This is getting a bit more complicated now. Complicated underneath, but simple enough not to compete for attention with the instruments and vocal on top. I may have stopped counting bar numbers, but I will tell you that this is the first vocal line. What do I hear? Obviously, ripping a track like this is never going to be perfect, so some of what we hear will be artifacts that are not on the original tape. What I seem to hear is more use of the open hi-hat punctuated by closed, which is pretty much opposite to the way things are normally done. This is, of course, to my ears. If you hear differently, please let us know in the comments. But listen to the fills. Well, they're not fills, just punctuation. Drummers probably have a name for that. Whatever gets more 1980s than this. Or maybe this. Do I need to remind you that this is a Christmas song? Maybe I do. But the LinnDrum doesn't have a sleigh bell. Maybe this is how it was done. So by this point, surely George's work is finished. Just more of the same, round and round until the end. Oh no, listen to this bit of disco that I'll bet you never noticed before. It's under Doesn't Surprise Me. There are more surprises to come though. Listen to this. The sleigh bells disappear at an odd moment, not at the end of a 4-bar phrase as you'd expect. Then we have disco, then a new hi-hat rhythm that we haven't heard before. OK, I might say that this new rhythm is an artifact of the rip. Jury's out on this, but it sounds nice to me anyway. So I listened to the end once through, and I don't think I heard anything different that wasn't a rip artifact. Sorry, George, if I missed anything. What I've learned from this is that what I thought was a really, probably excessively simple drum track, with sounds that were already on the verge of going out of date, it's surprisingly more intricate than I expected. Your turn. What do you think? Would the song be better with a real drummer, with a specialist drum programmer? Could we do better today with modern software instruments? Would a new version with your drum track be at the top of the UK singles chart right now? See you soon.